It is Friday, another Friday. I don't know about y'all, but these days are not feeling. I think that's a standard life thing is that Fridays don't ever feel like Fridays. So let me get pulled up here on Instagram. We are on YouTube and Facebook. Oh boy. So this week has been it's just been a whirlwind, honestly. I wanted to talk with y'all today a little bit about our sense of time these days. And that has been an overarching theme for a lot of the sessions that I've been in this week. And just how I kind of want to put a reminder out there is like, what really is time? What is time and what is how we perceive time? And before we get into that, I'm going to do a little something that I've been practicing a little bit more on TikTok, actually, just trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I want to, put myself out there? How do I want people to understand really what therapy is and why therapy, like, is important, but then also, like, why or not why, what therapy actually is for your life. So I use these cards. They're Affirmator cards. I was introduced to these. I did these last week, I think. So I'm going to keep kind of doing them again. It's a nice little opener, especially because I've got people who kind of come in and out of the live, and it can really, I think, give us something to think about for our day. A lot of people who are spiritual or religious, we pray. Like that is a really good action of how we bring to life what we want our intention to be for the day. At the point where I started my journey, I did not pray. I did not do, I did not really have a big connection to a higher power. So I really connected with these. So I'm going to, since I have someone here in the room, does someone want to, okay, maybe not. They did. But I was just going to pick, and usually when I do this virtually, I've got a client who actually is picking their card and their attention for the day, but I'm going to do it for mine. And then we'll dive into what is time? What is time and how does it relate into the overall grand scheme of mental health? So, but our attention, clarity. Stopping to listen to my inner self. I can easily separate my intuition from my mental chatter. The clarity of my intuition is as sweet as a simple fruit that tastes familiar, and the mental chatter is a confusing, bitter rind that I shall peel off and chuck into the garbage or the compost heap if you happen to be organic. So, oops, my Zoom background is backed up. So, clarity. So I'd like to say I have this like uncanny ability to relate just about anything back to a topic. So clarity and time actually go very well together. So I don't know if y'all noticed, but when we're going through stressful times, when we've got a lot of other people's problems kind of hitting and weighing on us. Um, our minds become a little bit unclear. We don't necessarily know what is truly ours. What do we have to do first if things become unclear? And this is where I see a lot of people's relationship with time become unclear as well. Because what is time? Well, time is our perception of how our realities are moving. So if our perception, what's our perception based off of? It's based off of the internal speed of our thought process. And what our thoughts are based off of are our relationship with how we understand what we're feeling. And so when we become conflicted, whether that be because we have a decision that we have to make or we have to do something for someone else, that's kind of honestly another decision, is like we have to compromise, like, are we going to do something for someone else or are we going to do it for ourselves? Things become unclear. Time tends to increase in speed. And this can a lot of times make us feel like we don't have enough. We don't have enough time. And this can ultimately make that kind of the tumbleweed of like our thoughts and the way that we feel and the stress that we are experiencing grow and grow and grow. And then guess what? Time just continues to go faster, faster, and faster. I don't know about you guys, but I am just as guilty of them or of the rest of anyone who can relate to this, is that my sense of time has been flying by. And then what happens for me is that it creates this urgency for like, I have to do work or I have to get this stuff done. Or it exacerbates ultimately whatever it is that we're focused on, and we don't feel like we have enough time to accomplish. So for me right now, a lot of that is the projects that I've been working on and the business that I have been trying to work on to scale. And I have really had to put my foot on the brake, slam my foot on the brake sometimes. And what that looks like, I'll get into in a minute, but like, stop. And that's what these cards, and sometimes like the reminder of having a moment of clarity, is that the faster, like if you're actually in a car driving 60, 70, 80 miles per hour, if you're more of a speed demon than I am these days, I've had to slow down because being in the car, the faster you go, do y'all ever look at the dotted line and see that the dotted line becomes almost like a blur? That is a visual representation of the speed that you're going. It's the same concept that goes for your mind. When I use this analogy a lot with my clients, is that it's the bicycle wheel concept. Is that when the bicycle wheel stopped, you can see very defined spokes, very defined, like the construction of the bicycle wheel. And you see there's multiple spokes. Sometimes there's only 3, but the faster that when you start moving, you can still see most of the spokes, but the faster it goes, the illusion that there's no thoughts, or I'm sorry, excuse me, no bicycle spokes in the wheel, I think I'm using the right word, that the faster it goes, the more it just looks like they're not there. That is the representation of what I tell people about racing thoughts. So if you're stressed, if you're feeling anxious, you may actually, like, if someone asked you what was on your mind, you'd be like, nothing. Because it seems like there's nothing on your mind, but really what's happening is that there's an immense amount of things on your mind that your brain literally just cannot take one thought out of, or you can't really take one thought out of your brain. The synapses firing so quickly that you can't make sense and you can't actually process them. Insert therapy, or that's why I say these cards, they can be therapeutic because they stop us. They ground us in the moment. They put us back into a seat of perspective. Get it? Oh, wrong side. They give us the perspective of our own selves, because when other people do this for us, which is great, like as a therapist, I am that for other people. However, I am trained to be unbiased and or see bias so other people can make the decision truly about what it is that they want the perspective on. And so my specialty is, I got a lot of specialties, specialize in clinical social work. I was trained from a clinical psychological perspective, diagnostics and stuff, and then also addictions and working within the community of addiction recovery. The cycle is the same for mental health. And because substance abuse and or addictions are co-occurring with mental health disorders, that we get, the more variables in, the more unclear that we become. So when you look at recovery, that concept can sometimes be very intimidating for people, because our concept of time, it's like, oh, I have to be sober for the rest of my life. I'm like, whoa, we're not living the rest of your life right now. Like, let's shorten that time period, because it's natural to be so overwhelmed and in such a new place of seeing and recognizing that all of these things are going on in your head. There's a lot of problems that need to be solved. There's a lot of things that thoughts that need to be reframed and reorganized. And we take a look at the whole spectrum, and we don't have the ability at that point. And I say ability very strongly, is because physiologically we've become imbalanced to the point where producing a new and different behavior is virtually impossible for some people. You're stuck in a pattern of behavior that is contingent upon you thinking and doing a certain way. We are an automated process. We breathe without telling ourselves to breathe, which is why the accountability of therapists teaching you how to breathe again, or holding you accountable to actually breathing, that's why therapy and breathing becomes the coping skill that works in any, like, we have to retrain ourselves to breathe again. That's why when we go to therapy, we have to kind of retrain ourselves to think again. And we also have to retrain ourselves to be aware of the signs of that can be our warning signs. Not necessarily triggers, but the things that we take a look out for in the environment that we have around us, that actually tell us, hey, I gotta stop. I gotta slow down. Just like you have panels on your car, like the check engine light comes on. How many people are like, oh shoot, I gotta check something out? We overlook it for a certain period of time, but then we know the accountability of getting a car inspection is going to be, we have to figure out why that check engine light came on. We don't have a lot of those systems in place from a health and a mental health standpoint, because historically we have not been expected to. We've not been told, or we've not been encouraged to consider health and mental health in the same regard as we consider taking care of our cars, taking care of our material items, taking care of everyone else, because those are the things that are externalized in our frame, in our worldview, and they don't have as much accountability unless we're sitting in front of someone who holds us accountable to them. So a lot of mental health is, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm working towards building my program to be something that people can do the work without having to be, fully immersed in the traditional style of therapy, because that doesn't always work for people. And everyone has to be able to make changes on their own terms. That's where, the other people around them in the support network, a lot of the times I end up working with not only just the individual, but I help people help their support systems understand how to support them. Because half the time we need the grace, we need the compassion more than we need to be understood, so we can make the mistakes that we need to actually get some of these new ways of doing and thinking in effect in our lifestyle. So, is that clear for everyone? Clarity is, in my opinion, clarity is dependent on being unclear. And clarity is dependent upon needing accountability to what it is that you're thinking. So whether it is that you're journaling or whether it is that you're coming to therapy, clarity is really contingent upon how much time that you're willing to put towards taking care of yourself. And that's where our relationship with time can come back in. Now, I'm not sure, I'm pretty confident in saying if I met someone who did not hear this quote at some point, I'd be really surprised. But time is money and money is time. If I had people in here right now, raise your hands, but you can, just connect with it when you watch this at some later point. Time is money and money is time. When I first heard that, I didn't get it. It's simple, right? It's super simple. But I didn't really value of okay, what does it mean? That means that whether I'm getting paid by someone else or whether or not I'm paying myself, or I mean, I'm never really just paying myself because someone else's spending is my, my deposit. We're all just exchanging currency. What kind of currency? The little green pieces of paper? Yeah, could be. But it's really more energy. It's emotion. It's the way that we make sense of the world. It's the way that we make sense of time, particularly because where a lot of conflicts come in, and where I help a lot of, I help the individual resolve conflicts within their own life sometimes, but I also do couples therapy, and group therapy is one of my favorites, that we have to be prepared to deal with conflict within the different areas of our life. And where was I going with this? Conflict, time. See, this is where I get off on tangents, and my brain is like, and you took too much time to explain this. The individual conflict that we have to be able to, time is on next time. When we put time towards something, we're budgeting. We are making sense of how much time it either takes to do something, how much that time is of value to us, and how much time that we need to take to be able to produce something within our lives. And if we see that time is only when we make money, then we're really not using our time as valuable, because we're really just expending our own energy, and we're having someone else place value on what our time is. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to go work for themselves. It doesn't have to be that way. But if you can maximize the value of your time, so because if you go to work for someone else and you don't like your job, your time, you may be getting paid for it, but your time becomes less valuable because you're accruing a consequence of displease, that's not a word. Being unsatisfied, being unhappy because you're not able to truly connect with what it is that the valuable parts of your time actually bring back to you. So if you were able to use one of these cards, this is where I tell people, like, you can use this with intention. If you can find a moment of clarity of something that makes sense to you, that brings back something that's sweet, and it reminds you, like, that was more about me, then you've now increased your value of your time while you're working for someone else. I don't know about you, this is part of, like, I don't want to get too much into the racial dynamics, but I have another area of, like, a platform where I talk more about that intersection between race and mental health. But part of, like, white culture is that we have this urgency to produce, but we're not actually producing efficiently, because we have more byproduct of stress, of unhappiness, and just health issues, where we're not actually serving the greater, like, capitalist society that does actually work well, but we're not dealing with the consequences that it actually produces, because we're only focused on production. We're only focused on, we got to get this done, whatever it takes. We'll rob ourselves from sleep. We'll create more problems. We'll create mental health, anxiety, and depression problems that we stay in denial of, because we're just so focused on the work. I've done that. I've been guilty of that. I still have moments where I have to find and hold myself accountable to that, because I could sit here after a long day with talking to my clients and be completely in denial sometimes that I am no longer effective to do work. I'm no longer effective to go and read my emails and respond to people. I don't have the brain capacity left, because I literally just gave a lot of my energy towards helping other people figure out what they want to do in their lives. The more that we build that awareness and that tolerance of, and we use that kind of to counterbalance the tolerance that we have to stress. When you can build your tolerance to the good stress and to the energy that it takes to actually bring back time, money, and energy to you, then you actually start to build this resiliency and the tolerance to the negative stressors in our world. That's kind of the work that's done in therapy. that's kind of, and we can do that. I truly believe people can do it, because that's also what I did. We can do it on our own, but we can't always do it on our own because we constantly need perspective. That once you learn how to provide yourself that perspective without getting stuck in the past, without getting stuck in anticipation. Last week, you guys can go check out my video that I talked about the difference between anticipation and preparation, because it's a very subtle difference. Sometimes it's literally just blends from one into the other and back and forth, because we can put these things on a spectrum of, you know, what's the common denominator that we're missing, and that is what's actually fueling the action that we have. One is a more sustainable fuel source. We don't need to use the only sustainable, well, actually, let me rephrase this. Emotion is a really good, powerful fuel source for our behaviors, but it's not sustainable. It can bring positive consequences. It can get us started, but you're probably going to run out of that fuel source by the time that you get to the completion, because you have actually used more energy to try to keep that energy harnessed than you have actually allowed it to influence good work. So I learned that from driving a hybrid for the last 3 years. When there was this big, not big, but on my dashboard, like electronic place, there was a diagram of how the car used energy, and where it pulled from in terms of the battery versus where it pulled from in terms of gas. And when I saw that visual, I had a moment of clarity where I was like, oh, that's how behavior works. That's how therapy works, is because we reallocate where the fuel actually comes from, where the energy source comes from, because we start looking at and we start grounding ourselves in the values of what using those types of energy actually produces for us. And once I saw that, and that'll be another lesson for another time. But when we can use the visual representations of what we have going on around us, or the visual accountability of, you know, for example, for these cards, which are going to be linked in the description of this video, and they're also in my Amazon, my list of things that, you know, therapeutic tools that can help people and you can be creative with. There's no one way to use these. I just kind of made up the way that I wanted to use them with other people, and it started helping them. So now I still do it. But when we can use the something outside of ourselves that actually doesn't have the negative consequence of what using like a substance or using an unhealthy behavior or a self-defeating behavior outside of ourselves, we actually end up occurring more energy saving in the long run than we do just trying to like overstep the emotion that we have. So that's my little thing on the relationship with time. Please take a look at just where your time is going. And it's sometimes very difficult to do that because we don't like the reality checks. I know sometimes I don't like a reality check. I had one yesterday that was like, ooh, I messed up. I didn't like all the way mess up, but I messed up to a certain point where I missed, and I learned a lesson. And it was a lesson of, yeah, I mean, it humbled me, but it's also a lesson that I now get to move forward knowing that I've learned, and really my focus just needs to be on how I'm going to maintain that lesson and that change within my life. So that's a little bit of what therapy does. And, you know, take a good hard look at, you know, if you feel like the days are going by too fast, if you feel like the time, you don't have enough time in the day to do everything, you really may not, but stop, take a look at whether or not that's actually a true belief system, and really take a hard look. And I've made myself available for, you know, open Q&A about like, what do you do with that? Is a lot of them are just very small changes. They're very small. Either it's a shift in how you look at it, or it may be that you have to make some adjustments, a couple adjustments in different places. So in turn, we can allocate the energy and the resources for how you accomplish all of those things that you want to do. So that is the topic today for how do you align with transformation is get some clarity, focus on where you can find your clarity, and what's your relationship with time like? And how are you going to improve that relationship with time? Because it's completely dependent on your relationship with how fast your thoughts are going. Slow them down a little bit. You'll actually realize how much you can get done in 5 minutes. So I will see y'all not next Wednesday, next Friday. I've got some cool stuff. I'm still working on the timeline. Is like I said, my urgency has been just as high, and I've had to stop myself and really, ground myself and like it's going to happen when it's supposed to happen. I've been seeing a lot of people being really open about that, so I can appreciate people realizing and taking the pressure off of themselves to not like get it done, or don't talk about it because you fear that it's not going to be done in time. It will be done when it's supposed to be done, and it will be great. So I've been working on a lot of things. I've been putting my new projects kind of out there for testing, what's it called, beta testing, and getting some good feedback. So I will, if you check out my website, it's kind of all up there and you guys can explore it as well, but I will be launching and making more announcements here in the coming weeks. So enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and I will see y'all next week.